example, like in Mathare, the largest Starehe, kuna time tulikuwa napata duplication ya development. In one area unapata choo zimejengwa mara mbili. Kama Huruma Grounds, nakumbuka kuna choo ilijengwa na mheshimiwa Kamanda na ikajengwa na mheshimiwa Wanjiro tena. Hii ilikuwa inamaanisha si mara mingi hawafanyi hivi kufanya kuleta impact for them. Wamekuwa wakifanya hivi ili sababu the major development zinakuanga na pesa mingi ambazo zitakuwa allocated, then contractor anarudi anapatiwa, mwenye anapatiwa hiyo kazi ni mtu within the management ya CDF. So alafu unapata pia hizi development zikifanyika zinakuwa substandard. Nimeona shule baadhi ya shule zenye tumemonitor, hata zingine kuna kesi ziko kotini ambapo dormitory zilijengwa ikakuwa hii dormitory ilikuwa substandard, watoto wamelala usiku karibu waangukiwe na madarasa zikianguka pia kwa constituencies zingine. So ile kitu ningesema CDF inafaa ikuwe ina impact na hata community inakuwa na say, but tunapata ile big man syndrome, na mara mingi mheshimiwa anakuanga always right. Akisema amesema. Hakuna mtu anakuwa anaweza mchallenge. Na una mchallenge unajipata kwa situation ya kwamba una incite communities. Unaanza kuwa profiled, unaanza kuwa targeted, unaanza kuitwa majina zingine ati wewe hautaki maendeleo ikuje kwa mtaa. So mimi pangu kama community organizer, human rights defender mwenye nimekuwa kwa frontline na wengine wetu ku monitor hizi devolved funds ambazo zilitengenezwa na katiba yetu. I think for sustainability, mheshimiwa hafai kuwa mahali popote, sababu ile influence anakuanga nayo kubwa inafanyanga saa zingine hata zile vitu mnataka hamupati, priorities zenyu hazipati, azitiliwi maanani. Mara mingi hata zile public participation zinafanywa, unapata watu wake tu ndio ana mobilize, au ndio wanaenda kupitisha zile vitu, wanasema kupitisha zile vitu maybe walikuwa wamekaa chini waka agree. Asante Diana.
Asante sana Mombi, na unatushow kwamba CDF ile shida yenye ilikuwa ipotelee zile experience watu walikuwa nazo wakati wa Moi, kwamba kama president ni wa east side, maendeleo ni pande yake, ndio imeenda ikahamia CDF. So ilikuwa ni fund ya kusaidia maendeleo pale mashinani, lakini mara nyingi inakuwa ni fund ya waheshimiwa. Na nikiangalia pale Twitter kuna Lempa alisema kwamba wabunge walijiundia a monster ambayo sasa ni karibu inawasumbua. Natafuta hiyo tweet ya Kiswahili changu si kibaya sana. MPs created a monster that they can't control. Dependency syndrome. Walizaa neno likawashinda. Hiyo ni maoni kutoka kwa Lempa. Honorable Kaluma, if you could please just the mic icon, if you press it, you will be requesting for the mic, and then we can make you a speaker, and Senator Okia, the same thing for you, please. A black mic. Inakaa kama ile ya studio, si ile yenye huwa tunatumia kwa rallies. Rosalia, please give me a heads up when our other speakers are able to join. Now, based on this, we ran a survey just before this, and overall, most people felt they would like CDF to be somewhere, but CDF needs some reforms. Okay, and some of the views that were received during that particular polling process is, one of them is CDF should be delinked from MPs unless the roles of MPs have changed from representation, oversight, and legislation to include implementation. While the fund has been effective in devolving funds, it has been politicized by politicians, which who use it as a weapon against opponents. So somebody sharing the views that have been shared by Mombi, then CDF should be converted into this is somebody on Twitter called Wanderer. CDF should be converted into an education fund administered by the Ministry of Education and disbursed to counties based on the number of eligible school-going children from early childhood to secondary school levels. Legislators should have no role administering it. Another view, it should be scrapped and those funds given to the Ministry of Education to cater for free education from basic to tertiary level. Titus Kaloki says that CDF, he's from Makueni, should be scrapped and the monies added to county government share of revenue allocation on condition that the budget process must avail them for development purposes in line with Article 43 of the Constitution on economic and sociocultural rights and equitably in all constituencies with MPs' input. Wilkista Akinyi is of the view that over time, CDF has been used as a political weapon to win potential voters instead of opportunity to improve service delivery and eventually people's lives. Why can't our MPs respect devolution and exercise their sole mandate of legislation and oversight? I don't know whether we are struggling. I can see at least Okia is now a speaker. And I must say it's a good thing because Okia has been a defender of the Constitution, and I have no doubt that he will make a great representative of the people, will provide the needed oversight, and will be a great legislator. Honorable Kaluma, who I also know on many fronts, is in every sense an astute, very, very astute legislator who has moved very, very many legislations on the floor of the House, has defended and ensured that various legislations are enacted on the basis of their strength, drafting amendments and mobilizing people. He's been part of very many hearings around petitions brought by wananchi, so taking the role of representation. So I know for sure, even as we get all these other views, we have amazing speakers to give us their perspective, and some of which we may not, some of us, we may only have one linear perspective, but it is an opportunity for us to have broader discussion. Senator Okia Omtata, karibu sana. Now, Dudley indicated that the Supreme Court, in their ruling, indicated that no fund should be linked to elected positions for people who are elected, not to the executive, but to be representatives, legislators, and people who provide oversight. Now, there is the CDF debate that is still ongoing, and the Senate, one of the areas of discussion is, look, if you're bringing a constitutional amendment, you had better ensure that our kitty as senators is the Senate Oversight Fund represents our work, our worth. We go around a whole county, so make it worthwhile. In view of the Constitution, your practice, your understanding, Busia ni kubwa, there are very, very many constituencies. Which way? How do we go about all this? Should we be considering the constitutional amendment? And I say this because when I posted the poster for today's discussion on my WhatsApp, I got a number of people. One told me CDF must be retained because if there was no CDF, I would not be a graduate today. Then the other one was former member of parliament who told me CDF reaches corners that middle class people will never reach, and it must be defended at all costs. But you have had Shiro, you have had Mombi, and you have had Dudley. Which way? Mtetezi Senator Okia.
Amujambo wote. Yes, my name is Okia Omtato Koiti, and I am grateful for the organizers of this forum to have considered me worthwhile to address it. So I'll begin by saying that, as Dudley put it, and as you elaborated, the Supreme Court was very clear that no funds should be tied to an MP, to a member of parliament or a legislator. That's both the national and the ward. And I think it's something that is important to appreciate, that we're given the mandate of legislators, making them oversight or execute funds creates a conflict of interest. But what is happening is that as the Constitution stands today, should the Constitution be amended, then that will override the position of the Supreme Court, because if you look at Article 2, I think Clause 3, you can't challenge provisions of the Constitution before any organ or any state organ. That includes the courts. However, when we look at what is happening, I first of all want to begin with the issue of the mandate of a legislator. That's both at the ward level, at the county level, at the national parliament level. That's for both MPs and for most members of the National Assembly and senators. For both of us are MPs. So for MPs and the MCAs, our mandates are just the same. We have got oversight, you have got representation, you have got appropriation, and you have got legislation. So when you talk of an oversight fund, really you don't understand what you're saying. When you just like, why would you have an oversight fund and not a legislation fund? Why would you have an oversight fund and not a representation fund? Because when you represent, you have to move around your elective unit to be able to know what you're going to represent. So why should you have an oversight fund? So basically, in the Senate, we have basically had a caucus, we have had Kamkunjis over the issue. Initially, we were going along, but after soul searching and interrogation, the Senate, I think, has delinked itself. I don't speak for the Senate, but from what I've seen, the Senate has delinked itself from the attempt by the National Assembly to amend the Constitution for purposes of the CDF. And the position of the Senate is very simple. One is that you don't need to amend the Constitution to have CDF. You only need to amend the Constitution if you want to link CDF to a legislator. So the Senate is fully in support of the CDF, and personally I'm in support of the CDF as a fund, and I think the Supreme Court did not find the CDF as a fund to be a problem. And the Constitution allows Parliament to establish funds. So why would you need to amend the Constitution to establish a fund? You want to amend the Constitution to establish a fund because you want to move away from the principle of separation of powers. So the Senate has given, I think it's a resolute no, and I think that's going to be the position from what I've heard within the Senate, that we are not going to go along with the National Assembly to amend the Constitution to create an oversight fund, because you don't need an oversight fund. Because you already paid a salary to do oversight, you are paid a salary to legislate, you are paid a salary to appropriate, and you are paid a salary to represent. So you don't need an oversight fund. What the senators are saying is that there's money for establishing offices that is given. Right now, is about 600,000 per month for an MP and 600,000 per month for a senator. It's an administrative fund. It's part of the allowances you get for establishing an office, to employ an office. So we are saying we don't need to go for an oversight fund. The Parliamentary Service Commission, which facilitates this allowances for employing staff and whatever, should just multiply it by the number of constituencies, so that for Nairobi, the Senate of Nairobi would be entitled to 600,000 times 17, and he creates an office in each one of the sub-counties. The senator for Lamu would multiply that by 2 for the 2 sub-counties. The senator for Mandai for Kakamega would do it by 12. For Busia would do it by 7, and so forth. So that we are not going to create we don't need an oversight fund. We just need administrative funds that go towards enabling us to create offices in the constituencies, and the money is equal to the money an MP. When we go to the issue of CDF, we are saying the Supreme Court has pronounced itself that you cannot be a legislator and an executor at the same time. We are also saying that the Supreme Court has clearly stated that the constituency has a unique function that it has that should be upheld. But the CDF, the Constituency Development Fund, is important and should be, since it's a national government item, it can be used as a fund, as a unit for government development or affirmative action or whatever it is, which then is oversighted by the MP. The MP can participate in the identification of priority areas, preparation of the budgets and whatever, just the way we do the budgets at the national level. Then the budgets are taken to the national government, they are funded, they are executed by the line ministries, but the MP oversights. And when the Auditor General reports comes out, the MP interrogates the issue and makes sure that it has been done according to the law. So we are not saying that abolish CDF. Now there are other issues that are coming up, and there's a lot of confusion. Today we were meeting. We met. I'm in the committee, the Public Accounts Committee. We were looking at the audit report, the auditor's report on Nyeri County. We had Governor Mutahi with us and his team. And in the process of talking, an issue came up that the governor is saying they're having a problem employing teachers for, what do you call it? The nursery schools are called, forgotten the name, ECD. They're having a problem employing ECD teachers. And yet, when I asked if he has got any money for bursaries, he said they've set aside 50 million to pay bursaries for people in secondary school and people in colleges. Now you ask, and you find in my own county, the other day the assembly was closed, and one of the issues that came up, the MCS was saying, give us a bursary funds. Then you ask yourself, what is the role of a county government? What role does a county government have in primary education? What role does a county government have in secondary education and in tertiary education? That is a role for the national government. But you see, they said they have forgotten about the ECD, which is their mandate, where that 50 million should be going to the ECD and improving ECD, which is a role of the county government. They are into the more flashy, the more visible one of giving bursaries, having to call people to a baraza, and then they issue checks, like money, like they're issuing their money, they're becoming benefactors and stuff like that. So the same thing is what is keeping many MPs yearning to hang on to the bursary, so that they are the ones who issue checks. And then people tell you tomorrow I'll not be in Nairobi, I'm not accessible to be in Nairobi because I'll be in my constituency, issuing bursary checks. Why can't this bursary be disbursed directly to schools through the ministry? Yes. I strongly believe that we should totally delink the money from legislators. We should have the legislators do their core functions of oversight, representation, appropriation, and legislation. And all those jobs do not require special funds because they are already paid in the salary. But your facilitation in terms of officers and staff should be there on the ground for them to be able to execute their mandate. And so I'm so strongly against the idea of amending the constitution to entrench CDF. I'm totally against the idea of MPs being in control of CDF or ward funds by MCS. Let the executive do their work and let the legislature do its work by oversighting the executive. And I think so far, that's where I would put it down. And I'm grateful for the organizers of this forum. And I would also be asking if there's anybody has this advisory that came from the AG. If anybody has it, I would request to be given a copy because I've been trying to lay my hands on it. It's time that thing was challenged. The advisory that's being used to get money out of public coffers to give to MPs should be challenged. And those who issue the advisory should either be declared incapable of holding that office or be surcharged so that we can respect the rule of law and organize that money should go to the schools if there's need. And I know there's need for that, the bursaries should go to the schools. And why should we have even all this multiplicity of bursaries when the money is so colossal? Why don't we just have taxpayer education? Taxpayer funded education. Let the people go to school. Let the taxpayer pay for everybody. And we forget about this madness with bursaries and bursaries which are attached to politicians or which are presided over by politicians. So that's what I would contribute for now.
Thank you very much, Senator Okia Omtata. You've been one of us, mwanaharakati, and as you speak, I think those of us in Ukereketwa who would be hesitant, you can see Okia is still defending and representing us in the Senate. Those are his views. Definitely CDF is needed, but the management and it being in the hands of politicians, elected politicians, comes in the way of their mandate. Anasema pesa na wabunge ziende parallel, moja pande hii zisikutane mahali popote. But Honorable Kaluma now has the mic, and like I indicated, he's an advocate of the High Court, a teacher of the law, a legislator, and somebody who offers serious oversight. I say this because particularly now, one community that was recently recognized, and it nearly moved Honorable Kaluma to tears. And he said, he promised them that I will draft a report that will end your misery. And for sure, it is a strength of that parliamentary report that has ended that misery. Honorable Kaluma, though there was a delay in giving you the mic, you've had the speakers and everybody saying, look, we appreciate CDF, but it is still a political fund. When it is politicized, then it gets biased. And like the Supreme Court has indicated, it gets in the way of execution of the duties of representatives of the people. But you've been an MP for some time, 3 terms so far. And so you would understand the ins and outs of CDF. very, very well. Are there myths that are surrounding this? Are people misrepresenting all this? And I know in the last election, most MPs who came back on the strength of how they had managed CDF. And the National Assembly website, whenever I have to look up a report, a bill, there is always the CDF survey. The go-slow that we saw in Mombasa, it was not for any other thing, not that hospitals lacked medicine, it was CDF. This fund is very close to MPs. What are your views, Honorable Kaluma?
Yeah, I hope you can hear me, my sister.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
You able to hear me?
Yes, Honorable Kaluma, we can hear you very well.
Okay, thank you very much. Good evening to everyone. I think it is even fortunate that I was not able to get into the program earlier because it has enabled me to listen to the concerns. I, in principle, agree with all the speakers on principle. The problem I notice that we are stuck to the CDF as it was conceived before. You remember when CDF was conceived in those earlier years, the MP was actually the chairman, the signatory, and the person who was controlling the fund. When the second amendment was made, the MP was made the patron and a member of the committee which manages the fund at the constituency level. Then there was the NGCDF Act of 2013, which I joined the parliament that first implemented it. Under that act, the member of parliament was removed from being an active player, including being a patron, but was left as an ex officio member of the fund. And as Dudley, you remember, mentioned, the 2013 CDF Act went to the High Court. The High Court made their decision. The matter went then to the Court of Appeal. The Court of Appeal disagreed with the High Court. In fact, the position of the Court of Appeal is that CDF, by the structures under the Act, is the most accountable, the most visible, and in the view of the Court of Appeal, a very constitutional fund. And so the Court of Appeal did not just, dismiss the petition, but, said there wasn't even need to repeal that law. Now, before the Court of Appeal made the decision, you remember the High Court had given a period of 1 year to Parliament to come up with legislation which would address the constitutional issues that the High Court addressed. And I remember at that time I was moved from the committees in which I was serving, including Justice and Legal Affairs, and I was taken into the Committee of the National Assembly, which oversees, the CDF on behalf of Parliament, simply to lend my legal knowledge to help, Parliament address the constitutional issues which the court had identified in the 2013 CDF Act. And so that marked the birth, you remember, of the NGCDF Act of 2015. What did we seek to achieve? Number one, by calling it National Government Constituency Development Fund, we were making it clear that this is a fund for the national government. And if you look at the provisions of that act, it specifies that the funds established under the act will only be used to perform national government functions. It can't be used to perform any function vested in the county. We also, under the Act, removed the MP even as an ex officio member of the committee. And so when I hear my colleagues there talking about MPs are still controlling and managing the CDF fund, I wonder whether they are talking based on what the CDF Act at inception was, or they have really taken time to read the NGCDF Act of 2015, in which I very actively participated in. You've noted from the ongoing communication and discussion that none of the panelists are telling you which is this provision of this new act which is infringes in what provision of the Constitution. Instead, you are hearing bare things like MPs should not control, and I agree with them. MPs should not control, and we removed the MPs. MPs are mentioned only in one particular provision in that act, which creates a structure called Constituency Oversight Committee. The Constituency Oversight Committee has mandates which are specified, and they don't include managing the fund. It is to ensure when proposals after meetings across the constituency have been held, and the community through the wards have proposed their projects, the committee of CDF will rationalize the projects and come with a priority list cutting across. Now, there are cases where you'll get the committees biased in some sections of the constituency against the other. So the MP, as a member of Constituency Oversight Committee at that level, is allowed to sit with the members of the CDF committee and to question, just to secure there is fairness, there is equity. Why are you neglecting that part as against the others? And that is the function specified for that fund. And so it is a suggestion. That is the time the MP and the other members of the Constituency Oversight Committee, who include just one member per ward, can raise an issue to say, my ward is not catered for, the other ward is not catered for. Allow me so that we can have good understanding to clarify something about the manner in which the CDF operates, so that we can, proceed with good understanding and agreeing in principle. The CDF is run by the National Government CDF Board, which sits in Nairobi. That board is a parastatal under the Economic Planning Department, which is a department under Treasury and the Economic Planning Ministry. That board is the one that receives. That board appoints a person called a fund account manager, which is sent to the constituency. That fund account manager maybe also indicate that the signatories to the CDF check include the sub-county or the district accountant. The district accountant. So that, you see, when you hear people, my sister, they talk about MPs controlling the fund. I wish they knew even the CDF committee does not have custody of the CDF check. The CDF check is kept by the district accountant per constituency. And if you look at Schedule 4, Sub-Schedule 17 of the Constitution bind there, you remember the people of Kenya were required to align the national government structures to those of the county. So we have the national government with their functions. We have the county governments with their functions. And there is a reason as to why those functions were divided in that manner. The thinking I hear from a number of colleagues in the panel saying, if the national government wants to do anything down there, then it sends the money to the county as a grant, derogates from the constitutional division of functions. So if the national government is performing, education at primary, secondary, and university level as a function, it will perform it from up. Let nobody imagine the national government oscillates somewhere in the air. It will perform that function from up to down. And in my view, CDF is an invention to secure equity across constituencies. I don't know whether my brother Ukia Mutata remembers that from independence up to so many years around the 70s, all the national schools in this country were in Kiambu. All other schools were provincial. You remember when then we had the second president, for a school to get a mere classroom, schools were being named after Moi, Moi this, and when Moi is going to an area, school pupils, school students are not studying for a whole month practicing songs, and you block the road, and then Moi stands on the vehicle and he says, watoto nataka nini, and you say bus, and a bus is given to a school without even a classroom. And that is when some parts of this country saw development. I wanted to remind all of us that some of us, like me, did not have the privilege of studying in the classrooms. Lucky ones like Dudley Ochiel talking about CDF did. We did not have anything called classroom. We were studying under trees, jigger-infested rooms, and anything in Homa Bay town constituency and in the larger Rangwe from which Homa Bay was split are structures of CDF. We now have secondary schools and nobody ever thought of because of CDF. So I'm saying in short that anybody still debating whether or not we should have CDF is somebody living in some story blocks in Nairobi, is a person who has not gone home. This is a debate for people in Nairobi who do not know the reality in the ground. The reality in the ground is that CDF is not controlled by MPs. Now, in terms of explaining the structures, when the fund is budgeted for by Parliament, that fund is released from Treasury to the national government CDF board. The national government CDF board will not release money designated for Homa Bay Town constituency before Homa Bay Town constituency through the CDF committee there, in which the MP does not sit, holds meetings across all the wards and they propose the projects the people are saying. Those projects will be proposed, Homa Bay Primary School, this secondary school, together with the amounts. And we have QSS at the board. Now, the proposal is sent to the board approves the proposal, and by the way, most of them are approved after a lot of revisions. What the board does is to, number one, ensure that there is no project proposed which is a county function. It must be national government function. But also that the projects which are proposed are within the range of monies that are reasonable and prudent. I can tell you, in Homa Bay Town constituency, I built a classroom to completion, and you can check with them down there. The CDF committee does classrooms up to a maximum of 750,000 shillings. And when you go to a classroom in the county of Homa Bay, you'll get a classroom going up to 3 million. So it bothers the people. We are talking CDF. We are not questioning where the county monies are going, even for ECD structures. We are talking CDF, which is only 2.5% of the national government fund, but we are not questioning where the 97.5% of the national government fund is going. Now, when money goes then to Homa Bay, Okia, it goes with something called authority to incur expenditure. That authority to incur expenditure will say, Homa Bay Town constituency should be getting 100 million this year. In that 100 million, the amount sent, like the one we were being sent for bursary so far, is 21 million. And this money is for bursary. That bursary will go that way. If it is money for school, it will say it is for Homa Bay High School, it is for Lake Primary, it is this, and to this amount. That authority to incur expenditure goes to the district accountant and the fund account manager, the employee of the board at each constituency. And I hope you are getting this, because then you will not, we are in agreement, we are debating because we don't know, there is no more fight over the fund. So when the money goes there, the district accountant, the fund account manager, and the chairperson of the CDF down there are mandatory signatories to the check. The district accountant will first ask, this money, is it for Homa Bay? So that money meant for Homa Bay Primary School cannot be sent to Lake Primary School. It has to go to Homa Bay and to the amount. The check is then delivered to the school. This is, I think, a point you should take very seriously for accountability, because Kenyans are saying, if county government funds were to be applied as CDF, we would be very far as a nation. So the implementing structure of CDF under the NG-CDF Act 2015 is the project management committee. The project management committee, if you are building a classroom at Homa Bay Primary School as an example, is the BOM of the school. It is that BOM as project management committee which upon receiving money which is to be deposited in the account of the school should procure, and then they oversee the implementation of the project. They are the BOM members. And as they implement, they report to the CDF committee. So that if you look at that structure, the CDF committee performs the role of going around to pick the projects which should be implemented, and then conveying funds from the national government board through the district accountant. And you remember the district or the constituency under the law is a sub-county, to the project management committee and getting reports which are auditable. The fact of the matter is that with that structure, if you want to audit CDF, my sister, and Anandudli, you just take the proposal, and they are on the website. I know you can access them easily. Pick the proposal for Homa Bay, go to such and such school, check whether the money was delivered, check how it was procured, and just ask where is the classroom or laboratory being built. And because of that, there is a lot of efficiency in terms of delivery. Now, the challenge we've had as I end this first part of interaction is that we have civil society organizations which started by being genuinely opposed to the idea that MPs as legislators should not be involved in CDF. But over time, through their litigation, enactments have been made that ensures that this is a fund that is properly oversighted, that is very accountable, that is the most accessible and available to the people. But without reading the law, they are still stuck to that mentality. And this is what I can tell you I saw even in the Supreme Court. And if I were to mention as I end, the Supreme Court was dealing with the 2013 law. And I think I've not hidden the fact that sometimes our courts, misuse public resources. Because if the Supreme Court, being the apex court, could say to be adjudicating a law which had been repealed by orders of that very court, then you see they are dealing with an academic moot issue. It's an issue which was raised there. So the orders which the Supreme Court gave related to the 2013 law, which no longer existed. The law on which the CDF is operating is the 2015 law. I know it is in court. I know my brother Ochiel is there. I will be joining it. He knows I'm already in the matter. In my view, in my view, not to defend CDF, because I can tell you, if you challenge the ladies and gentlemen there to single out a single provision which is unconstitutional, they'll not show you any. I will be there to educate them on those imaginations of the past they are carrying forward into this act, which has nothing to do with them. And by the way, if you look at that matter, you get them, for instance, saying, emergency reserve should not be in CDF because emergency role is for the county. The emergencies the county is dealing with is ambulances, firefighters. You cannot use CDF to buy firefighters. And what we mean by emergency reserve in the CDF Act is that when you propose projects, you propose once in a year. In the middle of that year, amount of 5% of the total allocation for constituency will be reserved, so that if an emergency within national government functions, like a latrine in a school collapse, like a classroom collapse due to bad weather, that money can be applied for by that institution, and it will go and be applied in the same manner. So largely we are in a situation where the civil society has, through litigation and activism, helped to come up with a compliant law, but they have refused to read the law. They are shouting the imaginations they still had the past. I know because we have refused to read the law as Kenyans. Some MPs still peddle influence. They'll go and for instance, say, I'm the one giving CDF checks, I'm the one doing what? But you don't want to blame those MPs. Instead, go for the accountability measures and address them. So I can tell you that is the system. The civil society has been enjoined by the Council of Governors. And I can tell you most of these cases we now have in court around CDF are being funded by the Council of Governors. And you just need to see the kind of lawyers appearing in all of them consistently to see that thread. And you know, the Council of Governors, the Council of Governors is funding these cases for the reason that they are receiving billions. They have no measures for accountability. This CDF, which goes to infrastructure, like in my constituency, after you remove bursary and those other statutory deductions, you remain with about 70 to 80 million. This 80 million, you go to Homa Bay, you see it all over. You go to a place like Turkana County, a county is getting up to 13 billion, but in devolved funds, but for the people to get water, they are crying to UNHCR. You get what I'm talking about? And instead of pushing the governors to work, we are stuck fighting CDF, which is the only visible fund. I invite you, after the end of this session, I think I'll have Lom over this weekend. And maybe I don't want to be even with you. I've even told auditors, where I've had auditors are moving with the members of the CDF committee in Aveco to audit projects. I've told them to stop, get out of the car, go and do your audit alone. Don't involve CDF committee, you're auditing them.
Honorable Kaluma, thank you very much.
Take papers when we are going. I'm just standing. And we go and visit the constituency. Go to any school, ask, did you receive this money? Where is the project? You don't need to even see the CDF committee. And if there is a challenge, raise it with the MP. There is the thinking that an MP should be kept away of everything, including their functions. I want to request you to read Article 95 and ask yourself whether the executive or the judiciary represent Kenyans. Everybody, including you, is represented by MPs in the National Assembly and the Senate. I want you also to ask yourself why we have the provision in Article 95 saying MPs in the National Assembly will resolve issues of concern to the people. And ask why that provision is made in the National Assembly, but not in all the laws for the county, the national government, and the other. So let me end by saying that we don't want to go back to a situation where for a classroom to be built in Homa Bay, I have to search for the president and call him names and call him to, that we cannot go back to. And I'm ending by saying that CDF is there. There is attempts to entrench it into the constitution. That attempt is not to say the CDF act as it exists, but we want to stop this constant litigation so that our good civil society and the Council of Governors, who are being ashamed by what the late CDF is doing, so they can also focus on other things. Look, lastly, as I speak, imagine, for instance, Homa Bay County got 8 billion as it does. And Okia, that money were given to the 8 constituencies of Homa Bay, $1 billion each. Where would we be? Where would we be? So
thank you very much.
Act is there to stay. We are entrenching it into the constitution to stop this activism around it. Do not know